The next Java 8 concept which we should know is nothing but optional class. So first of all, why this optional class? And then what is optional class? So for that, let me write a simplest example. So Eclipse is comfortable to write it. So let's write in Eclipse itself. So here I'm taking one more class of programmer choice. So I'll take it as some employee class I'm taking. So if do we have already employee class? Yes, we do have an employee class. I'll go for student class. Inside the student class, I'm writing one method. So public, the return type is string, then get name based on the ID of the student. So for this, now we have to go for return statements, of course. If the ID number is so 100, then return the appropriate student name. So to return this, first let me go for a string, some name, and I'll update this name every time. So what is that? Name is nothing but when it comes to name is 100, then I'll go for Sachin. Then else space if the ID number equals some other value, say 101, then let's update the name value accordingly. Let me go for Virat. And then else if the ID number equals say 102, then I'll go for the name equals Harman. Yeah, these are the three variables. Single variable. Then according to the ID number, then we are returning the corresponding student numbers. Then finally, what is we supposed to do? We have to return the name. Correct? And when we are returning from everything when we are returning from this, then why are we getting this error? Hello? Initialize the variable. The local variable name may not have been initialized. That's why what we're supposed to do? We have to go for writing the else block also. Else block, then the name equals so and so, no one, no value. Other than this 100, 101, 102, the name has nothing else to initialize. The name is null. Clear? This is one class with one method which takes the ID of the student, which returns the name of the student. Then fine. Now let's go for execution of this one. To execute this, I'm taking one new class, class name of programmer choice. I'll take a test3. Then to provide the input and to get the output, so I'm going for this main method. When it comes to main method, we need to create the object of the student class to call student class methods with the default constructor and some reference of the student say st. Then yeah, of course we can implement scanner class and all. I'm just focusing on the data directly. st dot, we have method name called as get name. Now based on this get name input, now we have to provide the appropriate number. Then what it returns? Some string, some name, right? Then let's print system.out.println, print the value of the name. Fine. Control F11. So we are going to get the output of the name which belongs to 100 is Sachin. Then we are getting the same result. Now can we perform something on this? System.out.println, print name dot char presented index of 0. What's the first character of this name I'm printing? Then we are going to get yes is output, of course. Looks good. And when it comes to we are not aware of so and so ID with so and so name is not existing, then in that scenario, for example, say if I go for 105, what's the problem that we are going to get? We are going to face one null pointer exception. Why null pointer? Because of the object is null, the data is null, there is no one, then we are trying to perform some operations on null called as char at 0 of null makes no logical statement there. Therefore, we are going to get the null pointer exception. Then are we sure that whenever we are trying to fetch the data from database, for every product ID or for every student name number, for every employee ID, do we find someone, or it may be null also? It may be null also, right? Most of the data of database, if there is no such data, the default value is null only. And when we are trying to perform any operation on the null data with unaware of is it null or not, then a developer has to face always the null pointer exception. Then what is the solution? One of the solution before Java 8 is, because we are trying to perform some operation on this name reference, which is the result of this get name method, then it's a programmer's responsibility of performing this null check. That is, if name is not equals null, then only execute the statement of. If it's not null, then only print the character. It means something is there. No? So this is nothing but we call as null check. Okay. Null check is the developer's headache actually before Java 8. Then because of the object maybe the return value may be null, then if you print it, it's null. If you print it, it's null. But if you don't print it without this one, if you are trying to perform, then directly we are going to get the exception of the program. Then to avoid those exceptions, always check the null check. Then if it's not null, then only do the operations. That's the syntax, right? Now, because of this one, always writing this null check for every scenario will become more number of times null check is a problem. That's why in Java 8, so to avoid this null check problem, what is introduced is optional class introduced. Yeah, of course, we'll change the syntax. To avoid this null check problems, what is introduced in Java 8? Optional class introduced. The purpose of this optional class is optional class is a predefined class present in java.util.optional class. Util package, it's present. And then for me, what's the purpose of it? Optional class is used to avoid null pointer exception. How to avoid it? Optional class is a container. Optional class is a container, like a collection. If some data is there, then iterate it. If there is no data, it's empty. Yeah. Therefore, what is the result that we are going to get is we are going to get null. And therefore, if something is not null, if something is present, then only perform the operations. Otherwise, don't perform any operation on that. Yeah. That's the difference here. When it comes to the same example, how do we convert that program into optional type so that the problem is solved? That is, when it comes to the student class, previously what are we doing? We are returning the string. Now don't return string directly. Return the optional type of string. Optional control space, Java is a package, and it says generic type. Then give a string. So when it comes to optional string, then the data may be there or data may be not there. If it is 100, yes, Sachin will be there. It will be returned in the container, not the value directly. Then if it is 105, then there is null. Then null will be returned. Right? Then in that scenario, so we are not allowed to return this directly. We have to go for optional. Because what's return type? What's return type? String or optional type of string? Optional type of string. Therefore, we have to go for optional dot a method called as off with a dot off. Then what's the value? Name is the value. That's the syntax of return sign. Optional class has one method called as off. There you return the variable of the program, variable of this return value called as string name. Now, once we return in this way, now while calling this, how the problem is simplified now is st dot, we have to call get name method. So then get name method. Okay. So when the return type is optional type, of course, I just change the logic of from if to switch, both are same only. So when it comes to return type is optional type, then while calling this method, now we are not going to get the data directly. We are going to get optional type of data, where optional is one container. Then in that container, we can use a method called as is present. It means something is present in that collection or not, or in that container or not. If anything is present, then perform the operations on that. Whatever is the data, get it first. We have to use get method to get the data. Then once you get the data, then based on the data, you can get the string methods that we can apply, length or character and all. If not, we are going to get no object is present. Now this will avoid the null pointer exceptions. This syntax will avoid the null pointer exceptions with the help of this optional class. It is a container. For example, if I go for this printing, whatever is the value of this container? So what's the value of this container? Let's cross verify first. The rest of the code, I'll comment it. Now currently we are printing whatever is container. So now if I give some number, say 101, then do we have a return value for that 101? Yes, 101 has a value called as row. Now let's run to cross verify. Control yes, Control F11. Then are we getting the data directly, or we are getting the optional with value? Optional is a container. In that container, there is a value called as object called as row. It is there because I'm going for a ID number which is having the value there. Now if I go for 105, then do we have anything for that? No, we don't have. Now let's run and cross verify. What is returning? What is returning? Optional with empty means there is no object is present for this 105 value. Then are we getting any error or null? No. Now if you try to perform something, container is the object reference of this optional class. It's not the value that we are expecting. Then inside this container, there is a value. Then first, how to get it? If something is present, then only get it. So we are checking this something is present. We are not performing the operation directly. We can't perform this container dot something. But first we have to get it. Then once we get it into our own reference, then you can perform the logic. Therefore, there is no point of getting the exception. Null pointer exception is not up. That's how option class is introduced in Java 8 to solve the problem of null checks. Now we don't perform any null checks like we used to do in the previous coding style before Java 8. If it's not null, then only do something. But if it is null, now there is no problem. Else block is going to execute, or we are not going to get any output if you are not writing else. Hello? Yes. Yeah. That is the purpose of optional class which is introduced in Java 8 to avoid the most frequently faced problem by the developers called as null pointer exceptions. And if you once we go to Spring Boot classes, there we are already going to use it in a write scenario. So as of now, just understand the concept. But as we move on to the next upcoming class in the Spring Boot sessions, then there we are going to fetch data from database. For example, there is a products database with some ID number. Then when a user is trying to fetch the product where there is no product is existing with some ID, then what user has to get? Null pointer exception or no data. So getting container with no data is better than getting a null pointer exception while performing some operation. That's the use case of this optional class. As we move to Spring Boot, we'll understand more clearly what is the exact use case of this null pointer, what is it null checking. So this I'll stop here.